Welcome to the Shock Your Potential podcast with your host, Michael Sherlock. We all have potential, but sometimes we need inspiration to get us to our peak performance. Whether you are starting out in your career, ready to move up the corporate ladder, or taking the leap into entrepreneurship, Michael's guests provide powerful tools and resources to shock your potential. Shock Your Potential is a global professional development training company committed to your unique journey. Learn more about us today at shockyourpotential.com. Listen in to today's expert.
Thank you for joining me on another episode of Shock Your Potential. And you know that all month long in January, we are reminding ourselves that yes, it's a new year. However, we must remain flexible because I think a lot of us started out that last year thinking, oh, it's going to be great. It's a whole new start. It's got lots of zeros in it. Now, what happened? And we want 2021 to be a year where we can all learn to be flexible a little bit more. And so joining me today as our guest is going to be somebody who has a lot of great tips to help us along. Spencer Snakard is the Executive Transformation Coach. She's also a trainer, a speaker for visionary entrepreneurs, which is a really important distinction because not all entrepreneurs are visionary. Some of them just like to be their own boss. And she likes working with people that really understand the concept of transformation and that they're on a mission to make a major impact on those they work with. And that's really about passion. She helps them break through barriers to their next level of success while loving life every step of the way, aka don't burn yourself out on your path, and without giving up what matters most to you, which is aka also known as how about do it and enjoy your life along the way. So she's trained people for nearly 25 years, and she's really helping people to shift and get the heart of what drives them so that they can make great decisions, business and personal. So thank you, Spencer, for joining us today.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks so much for having me on the show.
I love reading people's bios because there's always little tidbits that make me think about, how much we have to stop and think really clearly about what we're trying to achieve. Because sometimes we have dreams and goals, but we run into them. And I get that every once in a while, but really taking time on a regular basis to kind of, check in with yourself and say, am I on the right path? Am I doing the right things? And I love that comes through in your bio. So I hit just a couple highlights. Tell us a little bit more about you, your business, and how you help people to shock their potential.
Yeah, thanks so much. So you did comment on a couple of those high points that I do love, really supporting people. And first off, visionary entrepreneurs, as you sort of emphasized. I love working with the people that are out to make a major impact in the world, people who really want to shake up the status quo, who are not contented with the way it is, so to speak, and have a vision for something much bigger and hopefully better. And so I love doing that. And part of that I love is just the ripple effect and the feeling of impact and legacy that I feel I get to experience with that. But I've always been such a huge believer in really living in full expression of who we are, being able to really be fully yourself, and self with a capital S, like our soul-based self, because I think so much of our humanity and just how we show up as human beings really is much more driven by our identity. And oftentimes that's what gets us into trouble. That's what gets very fixed. And really your identity can be a huge vehicle for success. Many people, their huge, incredible levels of success they've achieved have been driven by aspects of their identity, like being a super achiever, being a go-getter, being, top of their class, or being someone who can get stuff done, or things like that can really contribute to success. But it can become very limiting. And so, because you have to be that, because it's born from this idea that you're not enough as you are, that something is lacking, there's something missing that you have to make up for, put in place. And so it becomes very binding. You can't be anything else. And so I loved this opportunity to come on in the month of flexibility. And certainly the last year that we've had so many people that have been really kind of felt like the rug has been pulled out from under them in many ways, when what they've been doing or who they've been being or how they've been approaching everything hasn't worked anymore. And they've suddenly had to
Right.
stop and think, oh my gosh, how can I do this differently? And so anyway, when we're living really in full expression of who we really are on that soul level, and really living in alignment with what we're here for, what we're put on this earth to do, and doing it in ways that we love, as you emphasize that as well, that I
Mm-hmm.
kind of feel like if you're not enjoying the journey, what's the point? So being able to bring all that together, and those are really the three key pieces of my framework that I work with people through. There's just huge access to freedom and to power and to ability to really make things happen on the level to the impact and in the way that you want to be having it happen.
I love it. And, we were talking before we started taping about, some of the things that, you kind of let roll, or some of the things you do, like, when the cat just jumped up behind me.
Yes,
And,
exactly.
and I think you make some really great points, because many times we have been known for something, and part of that becomes our persona. It's
Yes.
almost like you put it on in the morning as a part of your outfit for the day.
Yes.
And the I don't know how many times in the last 9 months since the world changed, that people had said, when is it going to get back to normal? When are things going to get back to normal? And I think, see, I'm one of those crazy people who likes change,
Hmm.
you know
Yeah.
um and so to me, I'm like, I don't want to go back to that normal, because that normal for me was, I had too narrow of a focus on things I was doing with my business.
Mm.
I, at that time, 95% of my income came from me getting on an airplane to go speak and train somewhere. Well,
Oh, yeah.
that's not sustainable.
No, it's not.
So I don't want things to go back to what they were. I
Right.
want I want to continue to change and evolve. So the flexibility, is really something to say, well, how can you constantly be evaluating and shifting and talking and asking? And it doesn't mean you have to change all the time
Hmm.
or change everything. But if we're never questioning where we are, or questioning that suit that we put on every day, that armor of, hey, you're the problem solver, you're the go-getter, you're the high achiever. If we're never saying, is that who we still want to be? Does that still serve me now? Then
Right.
you'll still keep going down the same path. You may still be successful, but I think, to your point, what you're asking us is, will you be happy?
Yes. Yes, 100%. And it's, you raised a couple points there too that I think are so common for so many, especially for so many people who are already successful, who are having big things happen in their life and in their business, maybe having huge followings, huge revenue,
Yeah.
huge, all kinds of great things. But we are constantly evolving. We are animals for,
Yeah.
we don't always think that we are. We think we're better than them, but we are animals, and we adapt to our environment, and we grow, and we have new interests and new priorities and desires. It doesn't necessarily mean that the heart of what we value or hold true, so to speak,
Yep.
as far as what matters in life, those kinds of things. It's not to say there's huge changes there, but certainly different stages of our life. If you started your business 10 years ago, your life is probably very different now than it was 10 years ago. And
Absolutely.
in my 20s, I would have loved to have been on a plane 95% of the time. I'm in my 40s now. I have no interest in that. And it's not just because I find traveling somewhat exhausting now, but also just because of, I have kids at home. I want to have time with them before they're off to college, and I don't have
Right.
that opportunity anymore. So we need to be able to adapt as we go, but it's very easy to get fixed in, but this is what's working. This is what's making me
Hmm.
successful. Who am I going to be if I'm not this? Will I have to start all over again? Am I going to lose everything? What if I'm not as successful financially or sort of position or status wise if I change what I'm doing? So we
Right.
need to really be able to be constantly, as you said, looking at who am I really? What really matters to me? What do I really want right now? And I'm a huge fan of designing your business to fit into the life you want, not to try to squeeze your life around or into the business you
Hmm.
want.
Yeah. I'm taking notes here. I like that, business into your life. Um, there's so many things that popped into my head as you were talking. Number one, I was thinking about, different, even like uh, pop stars. So I think of, Taylor Swift. When she
Yes.
came on the scene, she had worked so hard and knocked on every door in Nashville with her tapes to make it as a country singer.
Yes.
And she was a country genre. And when she came out with her first pop album, her fans said great, but her like competition and the rest of the industry went, what?
I got to
Why
admit,
are
I
you
even did
doing
a what? I was like, Taylor's singing pop? What?
And now I can hardly remember when she did country.
Right.
But she does it still, and she continually evolves. But there had to have been somebody there that said, "Oh no, you are
Hmm.
country. This is what you do. This is who you are." And
Yeah.
how hard when you want to change and overcome would it be when people around you are saying, "Whoa, no, this is the box. We like you in this
Yes.
box."
Yes.
Besides what's
Yes.
going on in our own noggins.
Exactly. And there's a lot going on in our own noggins. There's a lot of fear all the time on some level of, what are people going to think of me? How am I going to look? Or are people going to think I'm crazy or I have no business doing this? Or what if I fail? And
Right.
especially if those aspects of your identity are designed around the opposite. Like I said, if you're a super achiever, there's really no room in your life to fail. There's not, because if you fail, it's like you're nothing. Well, I'm the super
Right.
achiever though. So if I fail, I'm worthless. Who's going to want me? Who's going to, think anything good of me, anything decent of me out of that?
Right. Well, and I love also when you're talking about, business fit into your life. So my husband and I are contemplating, where we're going to live next.
Hmm.
And, so we're taking some time actually to visit places and be in the communities and say, is this kind of community? Now, first of all, I want to be somewhere warm next to a beach. But
Yes.
but as we've been looking at this and talking about it, and I'm thinking about, the fact that, we have been able to stay somewhere where we're literally on the beach and every morning go out for a 40-minute walk on the
Oh, it's
beach.
awesome. Yeah.
That clears my head. Like that the whole rest of the day is so wonderful. In fact, when we first got here and I was kind of decompressing, I went out 3 or 4 times just to even do a 20-minute or a 10-minute
Yes.
walk or a 5-minute walk just to be my feet in the sand.
Yep.
And I went, whoa. So no matter where we end up, I have to be within walking distance of the beach.
Yes.
I can't get in a car to go to the beach. I need to be near the beach. Well, that
Yes.
changes your expectations, but it's also about, what does that do for my business life? What does that do for my creativity? And to
Hmm.
be able to ask yourself questions, that when you realize that they're important to take that time is something that can be really eye-opening. Maybe we can't
Yes.
always achieve it, but if you know it and you strive for it, you can start taking the steps to get there.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, in fact, it reminds me of when I had a business before this of a yoga studio
Mhm.
while I was still working corporate, before I knew the world of online coaching existed, or I would have been doing that, but I didn't
Mhm.
know yet. I thought I had to work for someone else for crazy hours and no pay. So I thought, okay, I'll have
Mhm.
a yoga studio. And I loved what
Which is also crazy hours and no pay, but go
Yes,
on.
it is. Yeah, I didn't quite make that connection. It took me a while. And so that's actually what I was just going to get to. I realized many, many years down the road, it was about 15 years I was running the studio, and I started it when my first daughter was born. And my whole intention was, okay, let's have this replace my corporate salary and I'll be able to set my own schedule and teach classes when I want to teach classes and have other
Mm.
people teach the times I don't want to teach. And, I realized after a very long time of that, still financially struggling, I should have had a coach much sooner because
Yeah.
I now see where I was getting in my own way and where I was limiting my own potential there. But where was I going with that? With, I realized many, many years later that, my whole intention of being able to have time with my kids and flexibility was completely opposite of what life was really like for me because I was working a
Right.
full-time job. I was doing this on the side. I was having babysitters watching the kids while I was teaching
Yeah.
a yoga class in the evening. I was, spending hours doing things like newsletters or writing ads for local newspapers and things like that.
Yeah.
Where, when you're telling the kids, like, eat cereal, I don't have time to make dinner, but the goal was have time with the kids, something ain't right.
I love it. So true.
And when I realized that, I went, oh, maybe it's time to not do this anymore, to try something different.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people, it's a great question, no matter whether you're an entrepreneur or you're in the corporate world, that those are important questions. And
Yes.
you don't always have simple answers, or maybe can't always follow the paths right then.
Yes.
But because we want things to be fixed right away. But it's about, do we take the steps, the little steps, the continual steps to get there?
Yes.
Because then if you know what direction you're going and you start actually turning and moving in that direction, you're at least going to be closer than you were before you started the journey.
Absolutely.
I
Absolutely.
love it. So, for this month, and this, I think this conversation is perfect for it because it's all about, being flexible, or at least starting to open your eyes to being flexible. But, I really want people to embrace this whole year as a year of, no matter what gets thrown at us, we are going to adapt, and we're going to be malleable, and we're going to not let it make our hair fall out, or,
Yes.
overly stressed. But, what are your tips? What would you, suggest to my listeners and viewers to help them to achieve that kind of flexibility and do something with it?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things is, as we already said, having even the awareness of what you really want and what's really
Mhm.
aligned. So, my framework is the soul aligned success framework, and it's all about being in alignment, in full expression and alignment with who you really are, what you're here for, and what matters most to you. And so, first, to start even recognizing each of those components, and as much
Mhm.
as possible, getting them overlapping. If you think of it almost like a Venn diagram, the more overlapping they are, the more fulfilled, the more satisfied, and quite honestly, the more successful you are.
Mm.
It has me think of one of my clients who, when she came to me, she'd been hugely successful already. She'd had a 7-figure full service ad agency. She had huge health issues because she was working crazy hours and stress with that, and had decided she wanted to start coaching, consulting corporations, and then also was looking at doing more coaching with kind of solopreneur type businesses.
Mhm.
And the first thing that she said to me of what she wanted, because that's always where I start with people, is, well, what do you want? What's the big vision if
Mhm.
there were no holds barred? And what she really wanted was time with her family, time to just be present with her husband and her kids. She has 3 kids. And, she said, I want to spend the whole summer touring national parks in an RV with my
Oh,
family and not having to
yeah.
work or worry about money or stress or anything. But she had, part of who she is, or who she thought she is, and again, this is identity, not true soul self,
Right.
was someone who had to work really, really hard and prove her
Yeah.
worth through her achievements and her accomplishments. So even though
Mhm.
she knew she wanted to not be working crazy long hours, she somehow found she always was still working crazy long hours. And even
Absolutely.
yeah, and even how she designed her business really required it. So one of the first things we did was really shift to, what do you really want to be doing? And she said, I don't really like working with the solopreneurs as much. I love my corporate clients. She said,
Mhm.
and I really should be charging them more. And I said, yeah, you should. And in less than a month, she more than tripled her corporate rates and started really just focusing on the corporate clients. She gave up the solopreneurs, which the jump she then made to the corporate
Oh,
clients was
yeah.
16 times what she was charging the solopreneurs. And she was working with clients she loved too. And then it gave her
Yes.
more time to enjoy, to relax, to not. And that's not to say she didn't have a lot of work to do still and to take care of her clients. Obviously, she did, but she was enjoying it so much more and was having to do so much less to make a much higher income and earning level. And she she texted me a picture. We're still working together. It's been a little over a year now. She texted me a picture in August of her standing next to an RV. And I said, oh my God. And she said, we just bought it. We're going to head it off. So
Yay!
they've been touring around in their new
Oh,
RV. So yeah.
oh, that's fantastic. And it's a great reminder. And I remember having a conversation with a couple friends of mine who used to work for me long ago, and both of them have kind of retired and are working on new adventures.
Yes.
And we got together kind of as our own little mastermind group a couple times, and I think it's 2 years ago, February, and we were together, and I said, we were kind of kicking off where we were, and I said, you guys, I have to be honest. I'm like 3 years into this business, or I guess 2 years at that time. I'm 2 years into this business. My entire identity used to be that I was a VP of sales. I
Yep.
had hundreds of people. I was worth I brought in hundreds of millions of dollars, and I don't know who I am anymore.
Yep.
And I just like almost like lost it. And they go, that's so good. We feel the same way, but we thought everybody, you start comparing yourself to other people and you think,
Yes.
well,
You
they've
think
got it
everybody's got it
together and
together.
they've got it together. Guess what? Most of the time, none of us have it together.
None of us have it together. Yes, it's so true. We look at other people and we think they got it all figured out. They've got it all handled. And it's
Mhm.
rarely ever the case.
Yeah, it really is. But I think then when, with what you're saying is when you really slow down and you take the time to ask what do you really want? What do you
Yes.
want to be doing? What do
Yeah.
you want to be spending your time on?
Hmm.
And then if you have the opportunity to do it, then to make the change. And if
Hmm.
you don't have the opportunity to do it now, what are you going to do to get yourself closer to that
Yes.
opportunity?
To put in place to start the wheels in motion so it can
Mhm.
happen. Absolutely.
Yeah, I love it. And I do think that, flexibility, it does have to still come with a plan. I think sometimes people think, well, flexibility means that you don't have a plan, you just go with the wind.
No,
That's
not
not,
necessarily anyway.
that's not it either. I think that's called lazy.
Yeah. You know, I think it's funny. It's interesting to me because when I think of flexibility, one of the biggest challenges I think that so many of us have is we have expectations of how we think things should go or how we want
Mm,
that, how we think they're gonna go. But
mhm,
really, there's
mm.
usually a lot of should around that.
Oh, yeah.
And then when it doesn't go the way we think it should go or the way we're expecting, then it's like everything's wrong, something's broken, or I messed up, or he, she, it, they messed up. And so it
Mhm.
gets into this whole, something's wrong and this is not it. And so to me, some of the flexibility is recognizing, yeah, have a plan and start taking action, taking consistent action to move you toward that goal, and recognize there may be something even better that you didn't even realize was maybe a quicker way, an easier way, a more effective way, a more enjoyable way that you might discover along that path, especially when things don't seem to be responding or showing up in the way that you were expecting.
Right, absolutely. And it does it and that it's just awareness. I mean, there's just so much in there that's based on awareness and being
Yes.
able to, have some conscious decisions, to feel good about it, feel like you've made some things for yourself. And I think now one of the things that I know is really tough, from people all over the world, but especially just thinking about all of my following in the US, is probably about 80% of my followers, and I've got 18,000 or so connections on LinkedIn, are mid-level retail managers. So they
Mm.
might be a store manager, they might be
Hmm.
a regional manager, a district manager, and a lot of them are losing their jobs,
Hmm. Yes.
have or about to or fearful of it. And every time I see another person who on LinkedIn has said, I've worked for XYZ company for the last 12 years. It's been a great home. I've loved it. My position was eliminated. I
Yeah.
want to cry inside and say,
Yeah.
okay, gosh, when this is going to be a huge, long recovery.
Hmm.
But I also want to say to those people a lot of times, okay, take this opportunity. Don't let this kick you down.
Hmm.
But you have a chance to ask yourself, is that still what I want to be doing?
Right.
And if you do, great. I mean, there's more power to you. But if you don't, or you weren't sure, or you want to investigate, then investigate and volunteer. And while you're, in the midst of, the frustration of trying to find a new job, find some other things that speak to your spirit,
Hmm.
that might just give you a little new life, but also might give you something new to consider.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
a, it's definitely a challenging point where
It
with
is.
without a doubt.
It is. I always, well, when I'm not the one in the thick of the rug being pulled out from under me, I always view those as huge opportunities. I really,
Yeah.
and many times, even when I feel like the rug is being pulled out from under me, I feel, it just can be such an opportunity. In fact, I have a hard time sometimes if someone tells me that they're getting divorced, not wanting to say congratulations, because it's like for many people, I mean, especially because for many people, I know they were
Yep.
with someone that they really weren't happy with and things weren't going well and
Yes.
they were dimming their own light in that relationship.
Yeah.
And it's like, this is like a whole new fresh beginning opportunity. So whether it be in relationship, in career, um, honestly, even with health crises, sometimes, not that I would wish that on anyone. I'm not certainly not saying, oh, you should go have a health crisis so that you can start
Right.
over, but just saying that everything that life presents us, especially these big turning point moments where it's like what you thought you had doesn't seem to exist anymore. It's like,
Right.
okay, you've got a blank canvas now. What do you want to create new from nothing? And let's design it the way you want it.
Absolutely. And that's one of the fun things about this podcast for me is getting to talk with all these different people that are having all these other incredible experiences and working with people and corporations and organizations, and reminding us all that there are so many other things going on out there that sometimes it just requires you to unplug from your own pain
Yes.
and say, maybe I'm just going to plug into this other outlet just for a little bit and see what kind of energy comes from it. I don't
Yes.
know. I just came up with
That's a
that. That might
great
be a
analogy. I was going to
really
say kudos.
Clearly, my walk this morning has been brilliant for me.
See, there you go. We should all live walking distance to the beach or whatever feeds our soul. There you go. It's not the same for everyone.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm a Pisces, so, you need to put me towards water.
Yes.
Which is why I think I'm going for the, like oceanic hair theme.
I know.
We'll
You are totally rocking that look.
Spencer, I love it. I think you have an incredible insight on this. I really appreciate your strategies for people. And I think that this is the key of what I'm talking about, is how we remember to keep flexible, but by doing it by understanding who we are and what we want. And I know we'll have all of your contact information on the show notes, but just in case somebody right now wants to look you up, what's the best way for them to find you?
Yeah, soulalignedsuccess.biz. My name's a bit of a doozy. You could certainly look me up by my name, but you probably won't spell it right. So soulalignedsuccess.biz will take you to actually a page about a masterclass that I'd like to offer to your listeners that walks through a tool specific to helping you see what's standing between you and where you want to get to. And it really walks through a step-by-step process so that you can determine what might be in your way and how you can blow it out of your way so you can create the results you want.
I love it. Excellent. So before we go, do you have any last words of wisdom or pearls of advice for my listeners and viewers?
I love when I get opportunities like this. Thank you.
You betcha.
I didn't speak much about this, and I won't go on at length because we're wrapping up here, but the nugget I'd like to leave is I really believe we are spiritual beings having a human experience. And with that, I would say, remember that you are a magnificent, divine, perfect being, exactly as you are and exactly as you're not. I really believe our Creator does not make mistakes. And this isn't about religion or doctrine, but just in our soul expression, you got it all. You got everything that you need within you. And it's really just a matter of remembering that and being able to move some of those human fear-based barriers out of the way to be able to live in full expression of that. But the more you can remember it, the more the feelings of not enoughness or comparisonitis or things like that, imposter syndrome, they all just start to fizzle away.
I love that. You are everything you are and everything you are not. And perfect the way it is. I love that. Spencer, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us today. It is a pleasure to know you.
Thank you so much. You as well. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining us on another episode of the Shock Your Potential podcast. Learn more about us today at shockyourpotential.com, including details on Michael's 2 best-selling books. Tell me more, how to ask the right questions and get the most out of your employees, and sales mixology, why the most potent sales and customer experiences follow a recipe for success. And as always, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and like us today.